Film industries across the globe have been known for their ties with organized crime. But most people thought that with the corporatization of movies, their ties within the mafia had weakened. Is it still possible that the next film you watch in the theatres or on an OTT platform could have been funded by the mafia? Stay tuned to find out. There has long been a correlation between movie theatres running empty and the rise of organized crime on the streets, especially on the streets of Mumbai, which is the centre of Hindi cinema made by the industry popularly known as Bollywood. Bollywood has had a checkered past with the mafia in Mumbai, or Bombay as it was known back in the day. So much so that several films and TV shows have been made about this. My favourite among these is the Amazon Prime Video web series Bombay Meri Jaan. I highly recommend that you go and watch it when you can. If you found this video interesting so far, please like it and subscribe to the channel so that I can continue producing more interesting content. There is no question that 2024 has not been a good year for the movies, particularly Bollywood cinema. Most big budget films have not done very well, and if you watched my recent video on the market analysis of film and video streaming audiences, you would remember that the number of subscribers to OTT platforms have stagnated across the globe as well. In fact, it has now gotten to the point where mall owners in India are beginning to reduce cinema theatre spaces since revenues from movies have reduced. In fact, two of the biggest box office hits of 2024 were not Bollywood films, but films from the Telugu film industry, an industry located in southern India with its centre in the city of Hyderabad. This has led to many people asking if film industries need to change the way they make films. Perhaps we're moving towards making less capital-intensive films and making films with smaller budgets so that breaking even becomes easier and one single project does not pose a large risk to the production houses involved. This is perhaps the strategy adopted by one of the few production houses in Mumbai that has succeeded in making a commercially successful film in 2024. Maddox Films, which made one of the highest grossing films of the year, Stree 2, actually made the film on a relatively small budget and ended up making a lot of money to the point where it not only broke even with its budget, but also made a significant profit. But that is a conversation for a later day. The bigger question is whether the dark history of Bollywood is repeating itself in Mumbai. The situation of the film industry today is very much like the 60s and 70s, when desperation to get films funded led to Bollywood's dalliance with the mafia. Back then, Bollywood was not considered an industry and therefore did not have access to bank funding and other legitimate sources of capital. This allowed mafia bosses to enter the film industry by funding films and making demands in return regarding credits and casting of films. Many a times, these criminals would also demand overseas rights for Indian films, going as far as assassinating anyone who refused to comply. The link between Bollywood and organized crime is an old one. For about 2 decades after India's independence, the film industry was very focused on supporting nation building and therefore expressed the concerns of the new republic that was being forged here. At this time, the industry was small compared to what it would become from the 60s onwards. With politics taking a cynical turn in the 60s, Bollywood shed much of its idealism and nation-building fervour to truly embrace the commerce of the film business. However, since it was not considered a formal industry back then, they did not have access to bank loans and other clean sources of capital. This created a vacuum for mafia bosses to fill by financing films, asking in return that they control some of the distribution rights, a share of the profits, and a significant portion of the casting decisions of these films. This meant that if these demands were not complied with, people would get killed with impunity, and all of Mumbai lived in terror of these crime lords, not knowing how this love-hate relationship between Bollywood and organized crime would affect them. It is only in 1998 when Sushma Swaraj, who was the External Affairs or Foreign Minister of India from 2014 to 2019 and Minister for Information and Broadcasting back then, formally declared Bollywood an industry, did they get access to legitimate sources of funds such as bank loans? The question is, did this ensure that Bollywood managed to distance itself from the forces of crime? If the media is to be believed, then yes, it did. In fact, one can go as far as to surmise that much of the organized crime that plagued Mumbai was cleaned up post the year 2000. What put even more of a distance between organized crime and Bollywood were OTT platforms. These companies managed to not only democratize filmmaking, but also formalized the production process, perhaps even more than Bollywood's status as a formal industry had. There was more or less a set process that was followed when creating content, and OTT platforms began to hold creatives responsible for every step in the production process. In addition to this, every time a film uses government infrastructure, like the National Film Development Corporation or the NFDC for short, there was a clear process for regularly auditing the film's expenses to make sure all the support being given to the creatives for making a film is used properly. While this has its own issues associated with red tapeism, it certainly makes sure that all the money used in the process of making a film is clean. What is happening in Mumbai today certainly fits the adage, history does not repeat itself, it rhymes. There have recently been certain incidents that have been a cause of concern for some people in the industry. This could potentially be important for anyone who's looking to get into the industry at the moment. Over the past few years, there have been instances of certain members of the film industry being blackmailed and getting caught in the crossfire between criminals. Now, on its own, this might not be so much of a problem. Specific members of the film industry getting threatened by certain criminals may not mean the problem is endemic to the industry. For this shift from being the problem of certain individuals within the film industry to being endemic to the industry to occur, another ingredient is required. And this is what truly scares people. The economic issues precipitated by the pandemic have led to a shortage of capital within film industries across the globe. This has led to hitherto large production houses selling large chunks of their company's stakes to industrialists who have never had any association with the film industry so far. There was a surge in the demand for video-on-demand content during the pandemic, and this kept the film industry going. However, much of this VOD content was consumed on advertisement-supported VOD platforms rather than subscription-focused models. Moreover, the pandemic has taught people that entertainment can come to them rather than them having to pay a hefty ticket price to watch a film in the theatres. This means that there is a shortage of capital, leaving the industry vulnerable to funding options that may not be entirely clean. Even if the association with organized crime may not be by way of direct film funding, there may be other issues within the industry. The people caught up in the crossfire between criminals are very influential. This means that any projects associated with them will face delays, and since film shoots and releases in Bollywood are often planned so that they do not clash with each other, this will create a domino effect that will be very detrimental to independent, low-budget projects. One can only hope that the bulwarks that have been created within the economic setup and by law enforcement are strong enough to prevent the film industry from being taken over by organized crime once again. Since I was researching Bollywood's ties with organized crime, I thought I may as well look to the other prolific film industry of the planet, Hollywood. This industry has been as tied up with crime as Bollywood, and in much the same way too. In fact, the first generation of filmmakers moved from the East Coast to California in order to escape Thomas Edison and his exorbitant licensing fee. But by the 1910s, films had become a large business, and what started as small independent production houses had become large studios. The essential ingredients to keep this giant machine going were drugs and alcohol. Oftentimes, drugs were used to allow cast and crew members to work long hours or to help them rest when they couldn't, invariably leading to a massive substance abuse issue within the film industry. While association of this nature with mobsters was never clearly reported about Bollywood by the media, there has always been an assumption that substance abuse has been rampant within Bollywood as well. While much of this is believed to have been cleaned up in the recent times with the formalization of funding opportunities for films and more robust government and corporate infrastructure for the craft, one wonders whether the current shortage of capital within film industries across the globe will create a vacuum that the underworld will be eager to fulfill.